It's the 26th of September 2022. I'm your host, Dana Durnford. I'm also known as nuclear-proctologist.org. Welcome to the Nuclear Death Cult show, aka Nuclear Scumbag show. The reason we call it a Nuclear Scumbag show is because we use the word a lot when we're talking about journalists and nuclear academics, nuclear scientists. And so we had to give it a name, right? This is episode 2000, and who knows what anymore. We had a site with 1,600 these videos on it. They took down last year when we were researching spiders 400 kilometers away from home base. We got tons and tons of... see, you can't say great news. There's no way you can have great news. There's nothing great when it comes to the International Atomic Energy Agency. There's even less. Should the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, be replaced with homeless Fukushima nuclear workers? Now, you're going to have to get them into school to get some more education, but it could be done. It's a lot cheaper than killing the planet. And they're not going to pretend Reactor 4 and Reactor 3 fuel pools still exist. The IAEA never visited the site until recently, apparently. And then we looked for footage, we looked for pictures, we analyzed it, done an actual presentation on it. And there was no evidence they physically went to the site. There's no reports, no influencers in the homeless community have come out and said that they saw them there. So, like this caricature I have there of the IAE, which is a pretty regular appearance on this show, is not born out of from a meme. When I created this, I needed something to remind myself that evil exists. It really does, and demons are real, and we've identified a lot of them over the years. Okay, so we're talking about Fukushima nuclear meltdown, nuclear news. This is probably one of my favorite caricatures in a long time. Shinzo Abe as a ghost in Ghostbusters. Look at that. With tears coming out of his eyes. They're protesting the state funeral. Tomorrow, we might do a whole day live show of it. I'm not sure yet. So they have a museum just a few miles away from multiple nuclear meltdowns in Japan. It's a $50 million museum. And they want to keep the records. So they collected around 250,000 objects from the tsunami, the nuclear event, and the earthquake. So they have 250,000 objects stored at a $50 million nuclear museum. That's pretty impressive, right? So obviously, they wouldn't spend that kind of money on a museum unless they wanted to keep an incredible record, because they went around picking up all kinds of things. They didn't have room, unfortunately, for the records. They were thrown away. The municipalities in Iwate, Miyagi, and Fukushima Prefecture reported throwing out the records, and this is a picture of them. There's obviously only a couple of records. Have already been discarded, include notification from central governments and list of the names of people that went into the nuclear wasteland. Miyagi Prefecture's preservation period is expired, and we don't have space to preserve all the documents. But the museum, so very close to the nuclear meltdown, meant to bring those who are complacent into a nuclear wasteland, didn't have room for them, but had room for 250,000 other objects. This is when nuclear was popular in the 50s and that. This was one of the songs that it spurred.
There will soon be an end to this cold and wicked war, when those hard-headed communists get what they're looking for. Only one thing that will stop them, and their atrocious fun. If General MacArthur drops a atomic bomb, there'll be fire, dust, and metal flying all around, and the radioactivity will burn them to the ground. If there's any commies left, they'll be all on the run. If General MacArthur drops a atomic bomb.
Everybody was driving around in their 53 Oldsmobiles singing that all day. Fire, dust, metal flying all around, and the radioactivity will burn them to the ground. Our cases. You know, so if some country flips you off, drop a nuke on them. You wanted to nuke China, and they got stopped. You wanted to nuke the military. You wanted to nuke Vietnam, they got stopped. They wanted to nuke Russia, or France wanted nukes, so they gave it to them. That when they were in a war with, I can't even remember. Babies born this year may be working at Fukushima Daiichi one day. Because there won't be nuclear scientists or nuclear academics. The homeless, if the homeless survive, that is. Nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. But the IAEA finally admitted there's no such thing as a safe level of radiation. No such thing. And that the allowable standards for radiation are based on bananas, not on uranium or plutonium or man-made isotopes. So that's why we got a poll today. Should the IAEA, also known as International Atomic Energy Agency, be replaced with the homeless? Yeah, you got to put the homeless in school for a couple of weeks or months. But as James Lewis has said, you can put a rock in charge, nobody will notice. That's the sad thing too, isn't it? But at least the rock won't be out there causing problems. The homeless will say, yeah, no, the radiation's really bad, man. It wouldn't take them long because they're half experts. They're experts at staying alive at Fukushima if they survived. Lost a lot of friends. And the new people come to you and say, don't go over there. Especially if the guy with the tattoo tells you, don't do it. Allowable radiation standards are based on benefit. That's demonic. So what's your standard? Bananas, potato chips, walking in the sunshine, you know. Nah, come on, seriously, what's your standards? You know, sleep next to somebody, climbing mountains. Nah, come on, what's your standards? It's like sunshine. What's your standards? Bananas. No, you're not that evil. You wouldn't do that. Climbing mountains? Which probably explains why there was an extra 865,000 cancers in the first year. Still on the fence a little bit. It was just a random thing, Dana. 865 people just got cancer from watching 3 Mile Island, Dana. Japan to announce Fukushima water release into the sea, 2021. Now, they had 1,000 tanks in 2013. Did you know that? And 1,200 in 2014. 900 in 2017. They did so. And 1,000 tanks 2019, 1,000 tanks 2020, 1,000 tanks 2021. They did so. And 1,000 tanks in 2022. The water, because they're taking the water, they're treating it, getting all the bad stuff out of it, and then they're putting it back on the reactors to cool down the 9,000 degree Fahrenheit reactors. There's people out there who actually believes that, despite the fact it's such a ludicrous. You had 1,000 tanks for the last 9 years. How many did you fill up in 9 years? It's got bigger problems than that. 4.7 sieverts an hour coming out of the ground from the China syndrome, where it went down and hit the water table and detonated. Some of it did, right? That split the Earth in at least 6 places, where the radiation is 10 sieverts an hour, where it's coming out of the ground. The whole site will disappear for extended periods in this radioactive plume. That's lethal doses anywhere within the site, let alone on the site. The site has to be abandoned. And you can't just go in and fix it. Humans can't survive that environment, this environment here. So I've just got to build you a picture before he does the rest of the brutal show. Okay, so this is a depiction of the 190-foot, accurate depiction of the 190-foot building that no longer exists to the left, which was Reactor 3, a mixed oxide fuel facility. The very top of it is 2 pools in the red. They store reactor cores there for decades because they're still splitting the atom, which is why they're surrounded by farms. I'll explain that to you coming up in a moment. And so this is the reactor core, and you can clearly see the building no longer has that top or the fuel pools or the reactor core. Now, the official story is they plugged the leak with liquid glass. Liquid glass. And you might say, what the hell is liquid glass? It's a mixture of sawdust and newspaper, and we assume glue. So they got sawdust and newspaper and went in and fixed it. Now it looks like this. So stop fear-mongering. As you can see over there, obviously they fixed that. Now this was within 2 days. So they probably killed a couple of 100,000 people with paper and sawdust. Okay, so this is 2013. That's the official picture. This is the official picture also, and you guessed it, November the 19th, 2013, of the same building. Now, I can't tell the difference. I don't know about you. That's pretty fancy stuff. We asked one of the smartest people on the planet to explain it to us, Helen Caldecott. We said, Helen, does the building on the right or is the building on the left the real building? And she said the building on the left, Dana. hundreds of times.
Let me ask you this. You've said that if the spent fuel pool in number 4 collapses, that you would evacuate your family from Boston. Do you think we would ever know the truth of what's going on there? And the reason I ask is because we've seen coverage in the national news media here in the United States from ABC News and others that take video cameras in, saying that they're being given exclusive access to number 4 in the removal of the fuel rods, which is said to have begun. And what we see in the video being shared here in America is a pristine interior building. It doesn't look like a building in which the top blew off in a hydrogen explosion.
The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings, removed the debris from the top of Building 4, and it does look pristine.
Well, there you have it. Pretty hard to argue with someone like that. She wrote 14 anti-nuclear books. So she must be right. That's all I can say. So it doesn't look like that, according to Helen Callicott. It looks like that. That's a 2000 picture. So the homeless are not going to try to convince you that that's real. Which is why I'm suggesting that if we take the same homeless and give them a couple of weeks of education on nuclear, they'll be probably smarter than the IAE, and they're not going to lie to you. Is that a stupid idea? Okay, maybe I got to do a couple of years of education. I don't know. Just trying to be the worst nuclear accident in a generation. Because all the media came out, of course. Oh, geez, we're getting the fuel out of the fuel pool. The most dangerous thing humans have ever attempted on top of that was getting the fuel out of the pools. We're at the top of the building. They're invisible to everybody but the camera and the homeless, apparently. Years of duct tape fixes could result in millions of deaths. Fukushima apocalypse. Oh, you have no idea. Oh, this is fun. You like this? This is pretty cool. I like this one. TEPCO's training workers to shift to spent nuclear fuel from March. It never stops with these guys. This is an official picture. Training for removal of spent fuel from number 3 reactor. By the way, when number 3 blew up, they felt the explosion 25 miles away. When they clean up the wreckage and they ran into the homeless, this is as far as they got. They ran out of homeless at this point. So does that look like a 190-foot building, or am I just fear-mongering? So they're claiming they're getting the fuel out of the pool last year, right? The 10th anniversary, they announced this. They got the fuel out of the pool. Everybody can relax worldwide. Hip, hip, hooray. Now, the mixed oxide fuel, when she went off, it was like a firecracker. It was terrible. They left a stump, but magically there's a fuel pool. The homeless never said that. That's the IAEA says that, of course. There you go. First time anything worked around here in years. Irresponsible rumor claims the Fukushima spent fuel pool exploded. Huh? Well, it certainly wasn't Arnie Gunnarsson. He used to make the assemblies for the fuel pools. What are you doing, Dana? Hang on, I'm getting there.
The division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima.
So how, I got him up there where the fuel pools are. How could he not know the fuel pools are gone? And there's a lot of creeps out there support him. I mean, creepy little, you know. The U.S. ambassador wrote to the UN secretary, the Japanese ambassador to the United States wrote to the UN Secretary General that it's no exaggeration to say the fate of Japan and the entire world, fear-mongering, depends on number 4 reactor. That's kind of scary. Arnie said his biggest fear, and Megat Gunnarsson said the same thing, who was spokespersons for the nuclear industry for 2 decades. So their assertions, it looks like that, along with everybody else, but that's the actual building in 2013. Yeah, they put a cover around it. They cleaned up. So I put Arnie in the fuel pool. In the fuel pool. Let's hear what they're going to tell us.
The Unit 4 was damaged twice. It was damaged by all of the earthquakes that occurred, and it was also damaged by a series of explosions over the first week or two of the accident. So the building is structurally weakened. Now, Tokyo Electric's acknowledged that. They went in May and June of last year. This is more than a year ago, and put an enormous number of extra structural supports directly under the fuel pool to keep the bottom of the pool from breaking through.
That's amazing. They must be pretty special with their paper suits and everything. So the fuel pools are at the top of the building. Let me see. This is really confusing. So this is what it looked like. So hundreds of thousands sacrificed their lives to get some support under the fuel pool. Dana? What are you saying that for? Well, it took $260,000 to build an ice wall around it instead of a real wall. Of course, if you don't buy any material and you gave everybody $1,000 each, because that's how much money they had to work with. But they alleged 260,000 people built an ice wall around it. It's got no bottom. And the big question is, why didn't they build a real wall? Or why an ice wall? Which is normally used just for, costs $12 million a year to keep it running. It doesn't work because there's no bottom in it. And the ice causes neutrons to reflect back, which could cause a criticality in the build-up there. Who knows? This is David Suzuki talking about Reactor 4. He says, Reactor 4 tips over. Bye-bye, Japan should evacuate the coastline of the northern hemisphere. Take it away.
3 out of the 4 plants were destroyed in the earthquake and in the tsunami. The 4th one has been so badly damaged that the fear is, if there's another earthquake of a 7 or above, that building will go, and then all hell breaks loose. I have seen a paper which says that if, in fact, the 4th plant goes under an earthquake and those rods are exposed, it's bye-bye Japan, and everybody on the west coast of North America should evacuate. Now, if that isn't terrifying, I don't know what.
No, that's terrifying. Because we're talking about Reactor 4. So thank God we got the media out there to tell us the difference.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, leading to the country's worst nuclear disaster.
Come on, man, give her a break. She probably didn't want to do it. They probably forced her to do it. They probably waterboarded her, made her do it. Like Helen Caldicott, right? They made her do it, see? She'd done hundreds of interviews and said Reactor 4 fuel pool was having the fuel taken out of it because they threatened her. So they made her do it a couple of hundred times, apparently. She was terrified. She didn't want to go to the police because she didn't want her supporters to think she was a coward. Work at the Fukushima plant to go on for 10,000 years, longer than the human history. It'll be flown into the ocean for at least another 1,000 years. No, Dane, it's all in the tanks. I got playlists on the tanks you might want to check out. If you really want to know, don't open up it. You don't want to know. Japan welcomes UK lifting. Japan welcomes. Can you imagine how evil they actually are? I can't. I've been at this for years and years and years, but can you imagine how evil the people in the nuclear industry never spoke out worldwide, sat in silence? Oh no, we got to have nuclear power to fight climate change, which is caused by radiation for 80 years. Gas, oil, and coal emissions don't cover the planet. They barely travel 50 miles away from their source. Just don't put your coal plants in people's cities, stupid. Helen. Cesium remained dispersed throughout the water column from the surface to the ocean floor. But they don't want you thinking about what happened. They want you to think that it's actually all in the tanks. Ignore all the evidence Dana's providing. Bastard. You're a bastard, Dana. Stop picking on the nuke-tard industry, Dana. Mr. Arnold Gunnison said, move south of the equator if Unit 4 fuel pool goes dry. So if that happens, he says you should move south of the equator. Surely all of these people individually can't be right. None of them can be right, Dana. Are they, Dana? They found plutonium in every sample. Of course you did. Did you see the pictures? Each reactor fuel pool, there's 2 at the top of each building because you don't have a repository anywhere in Japan. That was stuffed. Around 18,000 pounds of it is plutonium. Did you hear me? We may not be able to live in North America someday. Japan. It's going to be coming out for a long time. Tens of thousands of years. And what do you mean coming out? Well, this model up the top corner is based on 20 days. It's based on venting, but 680 kilometers of coastline was stripped away. You had no power to vent anything. You remember that story where they say we went in the parking lot and got batteries? Gotcha. They're crazy. The reality of it is the industry is just kooky. The entire industry. Not just some of them, but the industry. Everybody in it. They're batshit crazy. We know that because none of them spoke out, right? You know, and are still speaking. Like, I'm showing you these headlines of people trying to warn you. Most of them retracted the statements, of course. Influencers, anyway. U.S. nuclear professor, Fukushima is a major event. Washington had radioactive aerosols 100,000 times normal, which was 30 max counts per minute from weapons testing and releases that's ongoing. Now, your Geiger counter is going to pick up gamma. And if whatever you find in gamma, you're going to find the same in beta and alphas and neutrons. Similar, I should say, or worse. Certainly not less. A far bigger accident than we're here. Model shows West Coast completely blacked out due to radioactive fallout. Scummerson says lung cancer to start increasing in the Pacific Northwest. 100,000 times has actually got revisited to 450,000 times above detection levels. And the xenon bombards it burns a hole through your lung and then sequesters in your bones where it mutates your stem cells and animals and insects and birds and all the species, unfortunately. Xenon at 450,000 times persisted. Really? You think it's going to go away? You're talking about the airborne, folks, by the way. Continuous plume. It's not like a nuclear bomb went off and this plume was drifting around looking for victims. This is covering the planet. This is a planet killer. It's happening in increments, and you can't see it or smell it or taste it or hear it or feel it or touch it or pick it up or throw rocks at it. And this stuff hovers near the surface where children are and animals and insects and bacteria and fungus and just, the important shit. Rain with 20 million particles of radioactive iodine-131 per liter fell in the U.S. during post-Fukushima peak. It actually peaked about a year later for iodines because it was continuous chain reactions. They consume rocks and steel and rebar and ionizes and radiates and atomizes and aerosols it and releases as invisible plumes. Remember the plumes, the 4.7 sieverts of radioactive steam coming out of the ground in 6 places I talked about at the beginning? They drift all around the world. We're talking about absurd numbers. The whole story is just nuts. Of nuclear, right? The whole legacy of nuclear is just hideous. It's truly a plague. The atomic plague is real. So there's 10 times more iodine-132, 30 times more iodine-133, 31 times more iodine-129 for every iodine-131 that's produced. 131, 132, 133 iodines, like 10 and 30 times respectively more per liter, is 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands, which is permanent, of all species, not just humans. Worse for vulnerable species, obviously. The females in particular are the most vulnerable, 4 times more vulnerable than males. So we have to protect the female species of the planet with everything in our souls. And turns to, because you're talking about a prolific amount of iodines, which saturates the thyroid glands of all species. And that's turned into radioactive hormones. It's hideous. This was an Ottawa, Canada study, central Canada. But it's applicable for the northern hemisphere. Because when they talk about persistence, right? So this is persistence. This model is based on 19 days in the corner where my finger is pointing of Fukushima radioactive fallout. Again, it's based on a flawed number. It's only based on venting. It's not based on the stuff I showed you earlier, which is significant. You couldn't vent because the power was ripped out by the tsunami. Right? It didn't start melting down until 5 hours after the tsunami, which a lot of evidence supports they melted down because of the earthquake. dislodged water cooling system, so they couldn't cool themselves down. They need 1 million gallons a minute, 4,500 tons a minute, 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks a minute. So imagine you got 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks, and you got to get them all to dump their load every minute in a small spot. 1,440 minutes a day. So Fukushima radiation is still circling the globe. Levels consistently rise and fall in a 40-day cycle. And we got reports right around the entire planet of Fukushima fallout. And the industry is very protective of itself. So I showed you the numbers of extraordinary numbers, 5,500 miles away, 5,500 plus miles away. Let me walk you through this madness. It's not good to say it sometimes. If you say it, rather, you got to show the documentation. Because my detractors will go, well, Dana always got the documentation. No matter what he says, he's got it at his fingertips. So if he doesn't show it to you, it's because he's hiding something. That's their argument, right? That I'm a savant. That I can, everything's at my finger. Magic, literally magic. I'm not a magician. I do magic. It's different. I'm like levels above the normal nuclear industry trolls, so to speak. Lessons from the Baltic Sea and Fukushima. Modeling of the marine radioactive dispersal in the International Atomic Energies Agency. The Baltic Sea of Fukushima. Tracking the complete revolution of surface water levees over the northern hemisphere using radionuclides, which is meant to downplay it, right? Industry's insane. Global and local cancer after Fukushima. Why would you talk about global cancer and Fukushima? If your coal plant, gas plant, oil plant breaks down, you don't use that kind of language. My apologies if I'm slurping. I'm a bit of a slurper. Saudi Arabia with Fukushima. So another thing about the industry you got to worry about is fake studies. 2.6 million studies a year in the Northern Hemisphere. There's a lot of fake studies are published, and there's an absurd amount we're talking about, by the way. And they're used to manipulate communities and cities and countries. Journals got dubbed into publishing fake Star Wars study. Information overload fuels fake studies, new study says. Major publisher retracted over 100 studies from the Cancer Journal over fake peer review. Right, to push drugs, chemotherapy and stuff like that. You create just fake studies because you can't prove with such a, 2.3% for Australia and 2.6% for the United States live longer with it than without it. And the study recommended that it's better not to do that. You got a much better chance of survival and much better quality of life. Retraction note to multiple articles in tumor biology. Phony peer review, the more we look, the more we find. Fake peer review hits RSC journals. We've covered thousands of fake studies. Paging Dr. Fraud to fake publishers that are rooting science. That's called the nuclear industry in other languages. China cracks down on fake peer reviews. Peer review fraud, hacking the scientific publication process. What publication? Taxpayers pay for everything. Then it's locked behind a firewall. Fukushima radiation still, Elsevier, Springer, and Wiley, the three biggest publishers, they got 22,000 journals between them. Which one do I trust? Fukushima plume consistently rise and fall, circling the globe. Every 40 days, it's probably quicker than that. It's a continuous plume, right? At this stage. Within 40 days, it was a continuous plume. It never stopped hemorrhaging out of it, as far as I know. And we're talking absurd numbers. They're splitting the atom, right? It's a continuous plume coming out of this environment. The whole country, really. When it comes to Fukushima, we're all downwinders. All the birds and the bees and the insects, everything. Airborne fission products in the high Arctic after Fukushima. Radionuclides behavior, just wrap your brain around this study. Behavior of radioactive cesium, the only acknowledged cesium, during incineration, the radioactivity contaminated waste from decontamination activities in Fukushima. They're decontaminating the communities, they're burning it in incinerators and releasing it back into the environment. They're stupid, and then there's the nuclear industry. The nuclear industry is it's levels and levels and levels above everything else that's stupid. They're professional stupid. They're working with technology they didn't even develop themselves. And they all feel like they're entitled because, you're working with the nuclear, are you? Wow. No, it's more like, ooh. Arrival of radionuclides released by Fukushima accident to the Canary Islands. Because it's racist not to give them radiation, right? Decontamination of radioactivity from contaminated vessels. Let me read that again. Maybe you didn't hear it. Decontamination of radioactive vegetables. No, they're not evil at all. Not even a little bit. Multiple nuclear meltdowns. They're already talking about iodine and cesium on top of that. Many kind of vegetables were contaminated by a huge amount of radioactivity. That's not a sentence you want on your vegetable packages, okay? Don't worry, we decontaminated them. They're safe to eat. And just as a sign of good faith, we're going to sell them to you a bit cheaper than the other stuff on the shelves. We don't want that to influence you in any way, though. Remember, it's important your children eat their vegetables. No, there's nothing evil about this industry. I can't imagine how that's to be construed as evil. Look at all the people that are not evil in the study. Absolutely none of them are evil, despite what it looks like. I know it looks bad, but they're actually not evil. They don't want the farmers to lose their unemployment benefits, that's all, right? Because they got to get their pokey in the winter, right? So they got to sell their vegetables. Yeah, a couple of million of you are going to get sick and die each year. But think about the farmers in Fukushima. They got to make a living too. How's the poll going? We got a poll. Not like all the other polls out there. We got unique shit going on around this neck of the woods. Should the IAEA, the International Scumbag Association Energy Agency, be replaced with the homeless Fukushima nuclear workers? I think it's a great idea. Yeah, they got to go back to school and everything, but they know you can't fool them on radiation anymore. They got it together now, I'll tell you what. Imagine the horror stories they'll tell you. anything, right, is better than the IAEA. Like a hockey puck or a rock or something. Reducing rate, this is, remember I showed you about the fake academic studies earlier? This is, boy. Reducing radiation exposure using commonly available objects. Don't get out of the nuclear wasteland. No. They kept the kids indoors for over 2 years in Fukushima Prefecture, by the way. Did you know that? Except for when we went to school. And don't stop on the sidewalk. Keep walking. All the way till you get inside the school. No, they're not going to have recess for till you're in grade 5. I got to put this on a big screen because... Sue me, I've been playing with my lights before we went live, and I think I made it worse. And I even turned off one of the lights. Didn't make any... I think it's just the glow from all the radiation I absorb. You see my Geiger counter up there. It makes me glow. In the soil at a depth of 10 centimeter from the surface, radiation dose rates decreased. Now they're using microsievers. And the count rate decreased 31,120 to 352 counts per minute. So the surface is 3,120 counts per minute. It's just gamma. The Geiger counter, when it sees that, is supposed to say run. Just run, man. Anywhere. Just don't stay here. But the radiation dose rate, the count rate, reduced when the soil was covered with everyday items such as a magazine, more than 20 millimeters thick. That's important to know if you're in a nuclear wasteland. Or a polyurethane foam board and a wooden board of the same thickness. To protect residents from unnecessary radiation exposure, covering contaminated soil with a wooden board or magazine is useful to reduce the radiation dose rate. This is a study, okay? So try to giggle a little something, or I can hear you all the way over here in Canada. Indoor experiment on Monday, the 18th of April. A little over 5 weeks later, we collected soil from a site where the rainwater collects. It's not water you want to collect around there or soil. With over 30 microsievers, the upper limit of the measuring instrument, and a count rate of 22,200 counts per minute of gamma. So roughly 80,000 counts per minute when you include neutrons, alphas, and betas. And then you want the same for X-rays. So 100,000 counts per minute. The Geiger count is supposed to say run, stupid. Okay, so we're getting to the good spot. In this study, the radiation dose rate count rate decreased by approximately 50% when the thickness of the shielding material, either the magazine, 2 layers of 10 millimeter boards, or 2 layers 10 millimeter wood boards, or 20 millimeters or greater. In addition, even though several types of cloth with 4 layers were used as shielding objects, the efficiency to shield the radiation dose rate below 10%. So a newspaper, 16 sheets, 4 corrugated cardboard, 8 2 layers, 25 millimeters of magazine. So in your home, and the kids want to play outdoors, you want to put all the shielding down first. I think that's totally appropriate so the nuclear industry doesn't look bad. The authors declared they had no conflict of interest on top of that. Try wrapping your mind around that statement. So why didn't they recommend evacuating them, Dana? Well, it's the nuclear industry. It's a small sacrifice to pay so the nuclear industry can murder you in your supermarkets every day. Observation of Fukushima fallout in Great Britain. Do I hear Germany? There you go. Xenon above Germany. I showed you that earlier. Radioactive contamination monitored the Korean public. South Korea. Dry disposition velocity of cesiums in Spain after Fukushima. Wow, they were doing the whole world's tour, weren't they? Russia, nobody's safe from this stuff. Romania, studies from Darwin, Australia. Australia, of course, won't admit that. Italy. France, of course, the French love radiation. Yes, give us more. Vietnam. Canada. Taiwan, of course. The nuclear industry in Taiwan is disgusting, by the way. Detection of Fukushima and traces in Monaco. Traces of this, traces of that, traces of thousands of fission products. Is not a lot. Dana is traces. Radio xenon in China. Beijing. Well, the real numbers, we got them there. I got to redo all of this. Radioactive pollutions in Athens, Greece from Fukushima. Liberia Peninsula. They actually acknowledged 4 in over Europe, high altitude. We got one more for you. Southern Poland. Long-range transport of iodine-131. They say iodine-131 because they hate your guts. 60 and older should be prepared to die at the Fukushima plant. Fire out of control at Reactor 4. Arnie Gunnar says, that's not true. Helen Caldicott, I think they got the fuel in it. It'll pull before the fire, Dana. Tokyo Vice Governor suggests a Fukushima draft. So if your coal plant, gas plant, the oil plant breaks down, should 60 and older be prepared to die? That offends me, by the way. Vice Governor suggests a Fukushima draft. Can a governor do something like that? That's frightening. Tends to concentrate in the testicles. 360 plus atoms of radioactive sulfur. Plutonium sequesters in your bones and your teeth, particularly your children. This is France's model. 16 days of radioactive fallout. That's the Atlantic. That's the Pacific. That's Europe. You kind of get where I'm going to. 16 days. The plume didn't stop in 16 days. It's a continuous plume covering the entire planet. Imagine if you had a snowstorm covering the entire planet and the snow never melts because you got a continuous snowstorm. Okay, so imagine a foreign object that pulses energy almost at the speed of light every second for millions of years covering the planet. Pulsing energy every second, and all the x-rays, kills all the fungus and the bacteria. Nuclear plants love you. Love to kill you. This is a real weird one. Why is nuclear power plants built in the middle of prime active farmland? You guessed it, because that's how they poison you. And they're pretty sure they're going to poison you because they've done a lot of studies. Uptake of cesiums and strontiums. Oh, to kill you is to be pro-nuclear. This is the frightening pictures. Farms right alongside the nuclear power plants. Now, it's not just a few, it's all of them. Strawberries suck up the radiation, Dana. So we want farmers to grow strawberries, and we know plants accumulate the radiation, so when you eat it in the supermarket, you get leukemia. All kinds of illnesses and diseases, and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries and illnesses. Heart problems, liver problems, lung problems. So 65 zirconium, 85 strontium, 134 cesium, foliage and root uptake in tomato plants today. Like farmers growing tomato plants around these death machines. Nuclear radiation, by the way, is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. So why are these built-in nuclear disease factories built in farmlands? You know why I like growing potatoes around nuclear power plants? Because they suck up the radiation, Dana. Oh, you got first prize. 5 buckets of horse shit. You got to bring your own lids. 50 becquerels a kilogram in humans lead to irreversible lesions in the vital organs. Well, let's build more nuke plants in farmland. What about all the birds and insects and species, Dana? Well, they're much more vulnerable, Timmy. The influence of the development of the fruit tree species, potential for uptake of potential. Well, let's see if we can get communities and their drinking water supplies right alongside of these disease factories. We'll kill all those pesky humans yet. Fruit plants. That's why they like all these farms around. Because the radiation is always hemorrhaging from plants from the fuel pools. From the disgusting disease factories. You like wheat? That's tough luck. How low doses of radiation causes heart diseases and strokes, lung problems, liver problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome. It's a total coincidence that all of these nuclear power plants worldwide are surrounded by farms. Dana, there's zero possibility the nuclear industry done something that evil on purpose. You know why they don't put coal plants there? Because the emissions are good for growing food in. Senior scientist, heart damage for children with 50 becquerels a kilogram of just gamma are acknowledging, by the way. Come on, kids, we're going to the supermarket. Mommy, can I have vegetables from the farms out by the nuclear power plants? Walt Disney said they're really, really good. So when your kid or insects or birds or animals consume or breathe or drink or inhale or absorb or wash their clothes or get a shower and this stuff, it gets into your bodies, your children's bodies, the insects and animals and birds. It's pulsing energy every second, increases the dose by a factor of trillions. This is bizarre. Why? This is engineering in United Kingdom. And Sizewell, I think this one is Sizewell. So they're going to build it in farmland, like they've been doing for 80 years, Dana. Irreversible heart damage for children with 50 becquerels a kilogram. Well, let's put it out in farmland. We got to vent this stuff all the time. The fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation, eh? They're hemorrhaging it. They're still splitting the atoms. You would for millions and millions of homes. And you put that stuff in multiple fuel pools where it's just hemorrhaging, still splitting the atom with no containment into the environment. There's some kind of evil there, man. And that's the engineers know what they're doing too, that designed these places. The industry is insane. It's absolutely unequivocally, ridiculously insane. and hateful. It just hates humans, hates birds, hates puppies. Ask Dr. Raymond Gilmet. He doesn't hate them. He just hates you having them. He'd rather have them and stick them full of plutonium and everything. Fukushima is the most serious man-made disaster in human history. Wow. It's a rare one. Obesity rates now nearly double. Excessive weight gain after radiation crisis is a marker of radiation brain damage. Do you know friends or families who've been normal weight all their lives and then just randomly gained a lot of weight? That's poisoning. That means you got all kinds of issues coming. Think about this statement here. Random statement. As the public, possibly worldwide, sickens over time, the truth will come out about Fukushima. As the public, worldwide. If you're going to make the public sick worldwide, and that's what they're suggesting from the Japan Times, then you're going to make every insect and bird and animal and mammal on the entire planet sick too. Sick being get sick and die. It's like 1,800 illnesses from radiation. That's such an amazing statement. As the public, possibly worldwide, sickens. I got to get that on my t-shirts. I'm not desensitized per se, at all. It shocks me. I'm just like, oh shit, I forgot about that. That ain't good. That can't be good. This is a new nuke plant they're going to build in the United Kingdom, surrounded by farms. They're growing food in a nuclear wasteland right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation. Try making that up on your own. I dare you. Double dare you. Make shit out like that. Try making that up. It's like, what the freak is going on here? It was banned by 55 countries from 14 prefectures. That's a map of Japan. And these were the large prefectures, the food basket of the Asian countries too. They're actually selling double what they used to sell pre-Fukushima. 55 countries banned it for 14 prefectures. Canada lifted all restrictions after 93 days. So they couldn't ship it anywhere, only in Canada. So everybody in Canada is sick. Radiation health specialists. Children with 11 becquerels a kilogram of gamma start to see heart problems. 11 becquerels. The alleged limit is 100. Listen, there is no limit. They're not checking, period, at all. Nothing. Particularly in Canada, they stopped checking after 93 days. Everybody else banned it. So Japan's like, well, the only place we can ship it is Canada. Characters sing, children play at a nuclear theme park in Japan. You got any idea how twisted that actually is? The crazy's got a nuclear theme park in Japan. Spider-Man, the Hulk, and Superman, Krypton. Just kind of lose faith in humanity, right? The industry doesn't have... They're only doing that because they know they're evil. They're not doing that because they're bored. They're not bored. They're too busy pretending that they're entitled. Absorb doses in the red bone marrow in Japan for the first year. Now, everything I'm going to show you, there's a good chance you're eating food from there because it's... So the average disposition density, again, the word cesium should make you throw up every time I say it. And just a figure of speech now. So, I can't lean all the way over there. Well, maybe I can, I don't know. What can I do here? Oh, I screwed up today. Big time. So this row here, population, Fukushima can. So each of these communities, you see that are the population, and this row is atomic decays per square meter of soil. Some square meters. So I gotta fix myself though. How am I gonna do that? How does one go about fixing themselves? What do we got missed now here? Got a tall, skinny Dana now. That looks better, actually. I don't know anymore. Hang on. Oh, man. Hang on. I gotta fix this. This is too much for even me. It takes me a second to mess this up. Oh, that's the wrong one, is it? Yikes. Let me fix that. I'll make that a bit bigger, I suppose, should I? I'll fix that for next time. I'll try this again, because Lord knows. Okay, I think I got it now. My apologies to everybody for the confusion. Okay, so all of the children living in these communities, it says they're in a gas chamber. The children are breathing radiation every moment. And so if you're in these communities, that's what's happening to you. This was United Nations numbers in the first year. Koriyama City, 341,000 people, 162,000 counts per minute of just gamma. This is absurd numbers. Because to acknowledge one, then you can extrapolate many others, right? Elementary school in Japan is using water bottles to shield the students. An elementary school in Koriyama City, 34 miles west of Fukushima Daiichi, they're using water bottles in the elementary school lined up in the walls. It's using water bottles to shield radiation from the courtyard and other areas around the school building. Rather than evacuate them, the bottles are filled with water and placed inside of square boxes that are stacked around the classroom. So the nuclear industry doesn't get a bad reputation, right? It's worth sacrificing a couple of dozen schools of children for the nuclear industry, right? That's the school. That's outside the school. 34 miles from multiple nuclear meltdowns. According to the school, it seemed to reduce the radiation levels inside by 1/3. You know, except for the airborne stuff, of course, which is... doesn't even seem real, does it? Mom, can I have those empty bottles? We want to fill them up with water so we don't get such a big dose every single day of school, all day long. In the nuclear wasteland that you're keeping us in, and the nuclear industry won't let us evacuate from. No, go suck it up. You could turn into Spider-Man, you know. Residents of Fukuyama City have been concerned about the high amount of radioactive material. Their town is filled with 1-ton bags of radiation at 100,000 becquerels a kilogram minimum. Koriyama City. 50,000 becquerels a kilogram of radioactive cesium in the soil near Tokyo. 75% of Fukushima city, 300,000 children going to schools so contaminated there would be radiation control areas in nuke plants. Top cancer doctor, nuclear radiation, the most carcinogenic thing that exists. So the homeless, if they were running the IAE, they would move the children out, see? Because should the IAE, now they got to get a couple of years of school. And then the IAEA can go work where the homeless were at Fukushima. And Fukushima can go sit behind the desk and just tell everybody yes and no. Can we radiate Canada? No. Should IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, be replaced by somebody with a pulse? How about that? That's the poll we'll do tomorrow night. Absorb doses what I'm showing is absorb doses in red bone marrow in the first year. Yummy. So the first row of numbers is the population in those communities. The second row is becquerels and just cesium, because nothing else matters to the crazies. I hate the word cesium at this stage of my life. After all this time, I still hate this industry with every fiber in my bone. Hate's not a proper word. I can't come up with a better word. Like, the contempt I got for this industry is, obsolete. Koriyama City. Well, school lunches are tested for radiation. That's pretty nice of you. There's an absurdness, of course. Parents they got to put bottles around their school to shield them from the radiation, but they're testing the school lunches for radiation. The parents don't know where the food's coming from. They're not allowed to give them their own food. That's safe. School playground staircase had radiation of 70 times the maximum allowed, which is an absurd amount, by the way. Equals 69,000 microsieverts per year, and just, I have so much of this stuff. When I say something, it's like the brain is ricocheting all of the stuff I can't show you. I should show you, but I can't. That's the problem with this story when I'm doing it. It's real. Because Koriyama City is actually outside the evacuation zone. The government has barely conducted any decontamination activity. What's the number of houses there? I can't remember. 94,000 or something like that? It's 90,000 of them are eligible for decontamination. It's 95% or something, say, was eligible for decontamination out of 94,000 houses. Yeah, as soon as we can find a couple of hundred homeless, we'll get her done. Which means you're not supposed to go back in your house. You can't decontaminate a house from man-made anthropogenic radiation. I'm not laughing. I'm trying not to scream. It's called a gallows laugh, where you laugh because it's so scary. The crazies, the aka officials, sharply raised the radiation levels for residents to get the useless iodate pills after the meltdown, 75 times higher than the crazies recommended for children. Because the World Health Organization is the same group subsidy of UN as IAEA or ERPA or the IRCP or UNSCLEAR. They got all kinds of radiation subsidiaries. So they'll have a debate, and it'll be the UN World Health Organization, We'll debate the UN, IAEA, and the ICRP. And we'll moderate it, and it's an impartial, but it's actually just a one big company, right? Which is known as the military-industrial complex, and the New World Order, according to George Bush Sr. Mom, can I have those water bottles? Because the teacher said we needed more. We weren't cutting down the radiation enough. No, let us go.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
See, told you.
We have before us the opportunity.
We have before us Neptunium-239 dispersal using TEPCO's release numbers. And the data includes the dispersion models for plutonium-239, Neptunium-239. The plutonium-239, by the way, let me go back to that. The plutonium-239 is the worst plutonium. And the model shows Neptunium and plutonium in St. Louis, Missouri. Really? And everywhere else. Okay, here we go. We're ready. Everybody ready? How long was the intro tonight, Dana? Just an hour and 20 minutes. A little something in my eye. That touched. Shinzo Abe. They're going to bury him face down so we can see where he's going, I guess. Was hit Kishida's popularity, which is the... I hate saying the word prime minister because he's a puppet, right? And he's like the 17th prime minister in the last 3 years or something. Popularity hit by a decision to hold a state funeral. His popularity dropped down to 40%. So Japan obviously doesn't want a state funeral for a mass murderer known as Shinzo Abe, right? Who was assassinated. Now, when I can't sleep, I'll watch that over and over, and that always makes me sleep like a baby. Wake up all fresh and full of energy for some reason. Not that I had anything personal against Shinzo Abe, of course. Within a week of Shinzo Abe's assassination, which is probably one of my favorite moments in history, Japan Prime Minister announced the state funeral will be held for the nation's longest-serving demonic, sadistic demon. It was a decision made without any public debate. Now deeply unpopular commitment to $11 million U.S. funeral. $11 million to put a demon in the ground. Sure, even the Queen was buried quicker than that. His approval ratings fallen to a dangerously low level. Of course, this is the Financial Times. They cut your throat, steal your kidney, try to sell it on the black market while eating the lollipops you're bringing home to your kid and smiling, singing. And Japan had 17 changes of prime minister since 1989. It's a stupid It's a stupid country, right? The people are good. The politics are stupid. They're so corrupt. Honesty, they treat it like it's a plague. Get him out of here. He's honest. Newsflash. TEPCO admits not working on plan to stop the Fukushima radioactive leaks flowing into the ocean. The Prime Minister, which was Shinzo Abe at the time, still clinging to the lie that it's staying in port. Shinzo Abe said, no, it's all staying in port. It's not going into the ocean. If it is, it's just tritium, Dana. Fukushima nuclear power plant storage equipment aging, nuclear waste leakage risk continues to increase. Try that again. Aging nuclear waste. A little bit of a problem trying to wrap my mind around this story. This batch of waste is not only huge in quality and diverse in variety, but storage equipment is aging and its leakage risk is increasing. So they're talking about containers. The Fukushima nuclear accident produced a large amount of nuclear waste, most of which were stored in the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. And the batch of waste is not only huge in quality, diverse in nature. The plant produces a sludge containing high-level radioactive substances. It's a very confusing story. When processing nuclear sewage, but they're talking about, so they gave it the wrong name, I think is what's going on in translation. They're calling it sewage. They currently stores the sludge in approximately 3,300 special containers. This is a very confusing story. At the beginning of June, a member of the Japan Atomic Regulatory Commission, the non-regulatory agency in Japan, which was created the year after Fukushima melted down, by the way, stated that according to the Commission's calculations, so this is the control opposition, right? The official narrative for the Nuclear Institute. 31 of the containers exceeded their expiration date, and another 56 containers would reach their expiration date within 2 years. Nuclear waste containers mainly rubble and used protective clothing. Right, there's 3 stories similar. So this is the first one we're going to cover. The nuclear waste in the containers mainly rubble, which is fuel pellets is what they're talking about. Remember, there was chunks of cement, like blocks of cement, that were registering over a sievert. 3 is a lethal dose. And use protective clothing. Which is confusing because we've covered stories where TEPCO says they burned 7,000 paper suits a day. They use what they call disposable suits. These are paper suits. They're similar to the stuff you buy to paint at home. And they tear exceptionally easy. There are about 85,000 containers containing nuclear waste, which is rubble and clothes, at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. Now, they have incinerators on this site, you got to remember. They just built a new one a couple of years ago, a big one. And so they're releasing dirty bombs constantly, which covers the planet in radioactive plumes. They're placed in the open air for a long time. In other words, they're vented into the environment. And one of the containers leaked in March. Well, it broke down from radiation being inside of it, right? These are polyurethane containers, I think. they shouldn't break down for 500,000 years. And some radioactive material flows into the ocean. Mainly rubble and used protective clothing. Rubble is leaking. I don't know, because they don't even give you pictures to work with. TEPCO plans to dispose of it through incineration. Well, that's reassuring. It starts off with highly radioactive, and they plan to dispose of it through incineration. 85,000 containers containing nuclear waste. Should I be worried, Dana? Yes. What do you mean, should I be? Well, they claim Tyvek, but TEPCO also claims to burn 7,000 suits a day. Incineration and crushing. Then incinerate it, grind it up and move it to another prefecture and burn it in the incinerators, right? However, the most critical incineration facility failed during trial operation. Let that sink in for a few minutes. Now, how did that fail? Did it have a chain reaction or something? Maybe. Well, the ashes left over it, because you can go so many ways with this conversation. Just this sad part of the story. So it could have had a chain reaction. Or the ashes built up are so radioactive they can't get back in the building. Or that one of the first containers they decided to burn had fuel pellets in it. And so people were dropping dead of heart attacks, and no one will go back there. Remember, 16,000 people ran away from the site, right? Like, no effing way. Yo, no, don't care how much money you're paying. I'm not going back into that freaking place. They're paying people $3,000 an hour. Pick the money up on Monday. Go over there and say cheese. Send us another homeless. Go over there and ask him what's wrong with him. Ah, crap, he dropped before he even got there. Incineration facility failed during trial operation. How can burning something fail? That's the strangest statement imaginable. The incineration facility failed during trial operation. Burning radioactive debris at a nuclear meltdown, and the incinerator. How does an incinerator fail to fix it? Yeah, but we can't get back in the building, Dana. So why are you burning it? I don't know. From February to May 2021, earthquakes occur continuously in Fukushima, surrounding areas. And 6 nuclear sewage storage tanks in the Fukushima nuclear power plant leaked. Because of earthquakes? That's what they're suggesting, right? Where's my sheep to? From February to May 2021, earthquakes occurred continuously in Fukushima. 6 nuclear sewage storage sludge tanks. Still supposed to be rubble and clothing, right? In 85,000 containers. But when they tried to burn it, the incinerator failed. So they gave up, obviously. The earthquake risk of the fragile reactor buildings is increasing. We worry about the building shaking and starting a chain reaction and releasing huge plumes again, because that's how this works, right? Everything looks totally normal to me, Dana. The durability of the storage tank's waterproof material is 5 years. What kind of durability is 5 years? 10 years have passed since they were completed and put out the vent. So they're 5 years past their lifespan. All of them, by the sounds of it. Not 63. TEPCO staff will conduct inspections 4 times a day. With what? Binoculars? You're not going near this stuff. And getting away with it. You're not going to inspect them 4 times a day. They're piled up in the middle of nowhere. Fukushima 311 takes time to make a geezer suicide squad. I always wanted a geezer suicide squad. That's not a derogatory term at all. But for the coal plant, no. Oil plant, no. Dana, gas plant, no. Nuclear, yes, boy. Jeez, thick or what? It's time to make a geezer suicide squad. They really like people that worked all their lives and were retired, right? Well, we can't get nuclear scientists to do it, Dana. Nuclear students laughed at us when we suggested they do it. They're like, no, I don't. No, class of 96 fell for that. We're not suckers. Fukushima radioactive sludge containers will be full of nuclear wastewater. Purification may be hindered. This is translated. So, nuclear sewage treatment will be full by the end of April 2023. Work on the treatment of nuclear wastewater at the island's first nuclear power plant may face obstacles. A slurry-like mixture of liquids and solids is reportedly produced during the purification of nuclear wastewater from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. It's okay. Bah. 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 There you go. That makes sense? Bah. Helps. Helps. Oh, helps. Hang on. That kind of sounds familiar to me. Give me a second. You're going to make me type that in. They're supposed to be in the search already. I'm disappointed. Hang on, I'm almost there. Okay, I'm not very close to it. Hang on, though. Let me try this again. Really? You're going to make me work for it tonight? Go, baby. Ooh, ooh. I screwed that up. You try doing this every day. See how that works out for you. All right. Just being a pain in the ass tonight. No. Oh, I put in farms. Tanks. Hang on. Nuclear industry's like, we got him now. He can't remember. It's finally caught up to him. Oh, here we go. This is complicated again. So there's not, though. If I go through the documentation, it's not complicated. So ALP system. Well, there was the Surrey system, which collected cesium-137, right? Wrong. That was another fable. So then, first there was the Riva. Remember, Riva went bankrupt a couple of years ago in France, which was the fuel facility which was the French government. But they had claimed they had the Riva system. The Riva system was kept out of operation for the last 3 years. So August 12, 2014. This is well over 3 years later. The Riva system didn't work. April 21st, 2014, 3 years, 1 month later, the ALP system is yet to function. Do you know what that means? There's certain parts of the site we don't even have full control because of fuel rods, lethal doses. So the Surrey system didn't work. The Riva system, filtration system, didn't work. The ALP system didn't work in the first 3 years. The bypass operation had no effect where they were directing the water by pumps around the site from the mountains and behind it. The ice wall didn't work. The fence, rather, didn't go up because it was going to cost $1 billion. $1 billion. $1 billion. $1 billion to build a fence. $1 billion. The ice wall, which allegedly well, it didn't freeze for starters. There's no bottom in it. Why didn't you build a real wall? Why gotta be so hard to get along with all the time? Oh, there you go. Every once in a while I gotta roll it out. What have I got to roll out? You'll see. Yeah, it never stops. Crazies. 2 sieverts an hour of beta radiation emitted from a single liter of water. It's a lethal dose. It's not just going to be beta. Okay, high-priced Fukushima ice wall nears completion. There she is in all of her glory. 1.5 kilometers. And they're alleging it's frozen. Of course, we know better it didn't. A total of 260,000 people worked on it. $260,000. I can't remember what I'd done. But anyway, when you divided the amount of money they had by 260,000 people, and you didn't buy anything, just paid the people, they made a little over $1,000 each. But the big question is, why wouldn't you build a real wall? because TEPCO would pay for it. So they didn't do it. And TEPCO, of course, was nationalized immediately because they went bankrupt overnight. And the people invested in nuclear are not allowed to lose their money. And so they told thousands and thousands of lies. Think about this statement here. The baseball chief scoffs at the idea that Fukushima has health risk. Imagine you're working in the media and you got to type this up and publish it. Imagine going home and say, "Hi kids, how are you today?" The ice wall will not stop the groundwater because, there's no bottom in it, right? So this was a map flying over the country at 1,000 feet by the Americans, published in 2013. 20 kilometers from the plant shows 3 million becquerels per square meter of just the iodine. But the plume model actually looks like that after 19 days. Right? This is the official story, that one here. But the fact that they're even acknowledging that is significant. France says Japan lost control. The French will leave the country. And they're ruthless, right? They radiated everybody in the French Polynesian Islands. They get their cheap uranium from Niger, where they've had a civil war for almost 60 years, so that they can get cheap uranium from there. Swiss embassy ran away from Tokyo. Not because Fukushima was uncertain, but because Tokyo was irradiated. This could one day be considered the start of the ultimate catastrophe of the world and the planet, which happens to be the same, So the idea of TEPCO is you don't blame the nuclear industry. You blame TEPCO. But you're not supposed to blame TEPCO. TEPCO is the nuclear industry. They were nationalized right away. It shouldn't exist, see? So Korea called Japan's handling of Fukushima incompetent. I don't know. I think it's on purpose. Polynucleide removal equipment known as the ALPS. I showed you that. In the first 3 years, it didn't work. The reason it didn't work is because the filter becomes so radioactive you can't change it. You can't pick it up with a forklift and move it somewhere else after 15 minutes, let alone 24 hours. You can't filter. That's the problem with the radiation, right? You can't filter it. Because, say you did filter it. You ran it through a filter, and you start bioaccumulating a lot in the filter. That's what a filter does. Like you or shellfish, right? They bioaccumulate 125,000 times more than fish do, because they're filter feeders. So that's why they disappear first. The sludge produces strong radiation. Lethal. Well, the problem with the filter is, if you filter, these are fuel particulates we're talking about. They're spraying the water over the melted reactor cores, they think. Maybe, perhaps. If you've done that, then the water is contaminated with fuel fleas. If you start bioaccumulating that in the filter, you're going to have a chain reaction. Not only that, after about an hour, water coming in at 2 sieverts is going out at 35 sieverts. Because the filter is a machine now. You can just pump fresh water in it for 1,000 years, and the water coming out the other side will be lethal doses by the liter. So these are the kind of containers they're talking about. when you search it. They only meant the last 5 years, apparently. And kept it in radiation-blocking cement boxes. Well, how do you get it in the boxes without harming somebody? Well, you need like 4 feet thick cement for just radioactive folly. What do you need for actual absurd sludge from the alleged filtration facility? Because you can't build a filtration system without having a plan for the sludge and the filters. But the problem was you can't filter it because you can't get back in the building after about an hour, because the filters are lethal doses from 1,000 feet away. It's the same as the tanks. You can't build another tank. By the way, they won't let anybody independently test the tanks. So if you fill up the tank, we've done the numbers on it, it's about 1.4 million sieverts of just beta, not counting alphas and neutrons and gammas and the x-rays from all of this, which you got to. You can't ignore that. You can't pretend that doesn't exist. You can't have one without the other. But let's just say it is beta. At 1.4 million sieverts, it means you can't build another tank there. You definitely can't build a... Now, we counted tanks. If you count the small ones, there's 750, not 1,000. Sorry to bust your bubbles. The cement boxes in the factory area were 96% full. If no measures are taken, it'll be full by the end of April 2023. It gets worse. At that point, if there's nowhere for the sludge to pile up, the Alps cannot continue to operate. This is ludicrous assertions, by the way. I already showed you documentation. In order to keep the lie alive, you got to tell more lies, is the problem with the nuclear industry. And with Fukushima, it means perpetual lies. According to the reports, there's currently 4,192 storage places for storage containers. And the TEPCO plans to add 192 more on this basis. Even if the storage space increased, filling time can only be delayed by about a year. Therefore, the probably reduced amount of sludge generated still under discussion. So they talk about the storage can be reduced if equipment to extract moisture from the sludge is activated. Again, this is madness to suggest that they can do this. It's absurd to suggest that anybody in the nuclear industry can pull that trick off. You got what you got is what you got. That's the problem with nuclear waste, right? Affected by it, but that's a good way for them to claim there's not so... Because they're not filling up the containers, they need an excuse to get rid of the containers. The same as the tanks, where they claim they're recycling the water back as coolant. And that's why they don't have more tanks. You can fill up all the tanks in 24 hours from a normal operating reactor, let alone 4 multiple nuclear meltdowns. At the volume that's going into the tanks today is equal to a garden hose, 122 tons. Which is a typical garden hose. So if you split a garden hose 4 ways and spread it 4 ways on the 4 reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you sucked all of that up, that's what's going into a tank each day. That's the official story, the kooky, batshit, evil, disgusting, fruitcake story, the lunatic, degenerate, coward nuclear industry cooked up. Not the lobbying group, right? World Nuclear Association, the Sammy Bobo or whatever, the Boo Boo, whatever the freak her name is. On the 13th of April 2021, the Japanese government officially decided to discharge the Fukushima nuclear sewage into the sea after filtering and diluting it. So they're talking about the filters, the sediment from the filters. This is what they're probably talking about. So there's this one community, I can't remember the name of it, not that far from Tokyo, a number of years ago, made it into the media. They had 50,000 containers, 1-ton bags of sediment from water reclamation, water filtration facilities. So when they filter the water for the community at the water filter, normally that sediment is very rich sediment, right? And then that's sold to farmers and stuff. But the sediment from all of the water reclamation centers throughout Japan are too radioactive to get rid of. So is the sewage, by the way. And so is the ash from the incinerators across the country. It's too radioactive to dispose of. Do you want TEPCO to take care of it? TEPCO's like, no. That's yours. You keep it. You're talking about 50,000 1-ton bags in this one community. That was just the first couple of years, rather. So you shouldn't have drank the water, you see? They officially decided to discharge the Fukushima nuclear sewage, sludge, from the filters of the Riva, or the Alp system, rather, into the sea. They're going to burn the other stuff. Remember that story just before this story? This is an amazing 2 stories in a row, folks. In the process of the nuclear sewage treatment problem, such as filter damage, excessive strontium-90, activity of the radioactive material after treatment were encountered successively. Japan's decision to discharge the sewage into the sea also strongly opposed by residents of the Fukushima Prefecture National Federation of Fisheries Trade Union in Japan, who shouldn't be fishing, obviously. That's 2 incredible stories. Unfortunately, we got another one. Stupid doesn't stop at one, you know that, right? The Japanese government persisted in insisting on the discharge of nuclear polluted water into the sea. TEPCO has prepared about 1,000 water storage tanks. Never stops, man. Never stops. They just lie and lie some more. The only thing they're good at is lying, and unfortunately, they're experts. It doesn't stand up to scrutiny, of course, right? I keep wishing I was evil. I get a nice cushy job, lots of money. All I gotta do is be a nuclear scumbag. Where are you two, boys? I must be losing my magic touch. Right? I'll go back and try again. I'll fix that tonight. $1,200 tanks. There we go. A little rusty, Dana. That's what it is. You're getting rusty. You got to tell the story regularly to keep it fresh, and because there's so many facets to batshit nuclear. It's 2017, Dana. That's not it. That's not it. 2013, Mary Yamaguchi. If you see Mary Yamaguchi, it's the cover story, right? 2013, Mary Yamaguchi. 2014, Mary Yamaguchi. So officially 2013, they had 1,000 steel tanks 9 years ago. 2014, they had 1,200 tanks. 2017, they had 900 tanks. Again, I challenge anybody to go out and walk with both heels on the ground. I can't even do that standing up. Japan will have to dump radioactive water 2019. The fourth sentence from the bottom, very left, 1,000 tanks. 2021, 1,000 tanks. 2022, 1,000 tanks. 2023, 1,000 tanks. 2024, 1,000 tanks. The Japanese government, the nuclear industry, held a cabinet meeting last year to formally decide to filter and dilute the nuclear contaminated water, which is different from the sludge and is different from the rubble and the clothing. Discharge it into the sea. And they have about 1,000 tanks since 2012. But they're filling up tanks all the time for the last 9 years. They're invisible. Now, the two options were discharging it directly into the sea or boiling it away. Now, the reason they're talking about the tanks are empty. They're built to trick you, that's all. To trick you thinking they didn't pollute the entire planet. It's 100%. So the last thing you want to do is blame for killing the Pacific Ocean. Nuclear industry couldn't handle that, so they panicked right away and built 1,000 tanks. And 9 years later, they still got 1,000 tanks. It's not evil, it's Machiavellian. They're evil by nature. According to the batshit lunatics, the two options for discharging is evaporating into the atmosphere. Now, after 3 Mile Island, Arnie Gunness and Lake Barrett allegedly boiled millions of gallons off. Arnie used to send people in 3 Mile Island for 3 minutes. They get their lifetime dose. And go home and die. Homeless people. And discharge into the sea requires the shortest time and costs the least. Because you can't keep the lie alive, so they're going to pretend that they're discharging highly radioactive water into the sea. The tanks were only built to last a couple of years, and they were bolted together. I've got entire presentations on the tanks in my playlist that are worth your watch. It's hard to be crazy. That's the problem. Each one of these programs are just what? I mean, years ago they'd made me take down 300 videos with a court order. A court order. Signed by a judge. No get out of jail free cards. So Japan has some civil organizations, including Atomic Force Citizens Committee, composed of citizen scholars and the Japan Bar Association. I don't know if I like that combination. Have publicly opposed the discharge of the nuclear contaminated water to the sea. Meanwhile, we had people set themselves on fire because Shinzo Abe is going to get a state funeral tomorrow. Please, please, please. According to the Japanese government, TEPCO, before the end of nuclear contaminated water is discharged, she's filtered by ALPS to remove 62 kinds of radioactive substances. And yes, they say tritium. Unfortunately, please And I didn't do it. I didn't say it. That's them. You can't have tritium. You can't filter it. And there's more than 62. It's absurd to suggest they can filter 3 of them, let alone there's 1,000 fission products you got to worry about. So tritium is an insult. They've been doing that routine for years and years and years. So my video last night was hour 57. Oh, that's what's supposed to happen, but hey, that's what happened. So hour 57, 54. Survey says, how long is my video? Now, after 12 hours, my videos gets longer or shorter. Nobody else does, but I'm special. So now it's hour 58:01. So it went hour 58:01 now. So 7 seconds longer, which is pretty consistent, right? Almost every single one of my videos gets 7 seconds longer. We had one last week, got 10 minutes shorter. Okay, well, I think that's good enough for tonight, is it? Yeah. Ooh, 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 ooh. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing good. I guess I gotta work on my lights again tomorrow night. If I sit over here, Dana, it's not so bad. If I sit over here, I get a wipeout. So I moved the lights on the side of me away. I turned off the center one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, try again tomorrow night. And try again. Looks like we had a couple of spammers from the IAEA showed up. Should the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, be replaced with the homeless Fukushima nuclear workers? Well, because the nuclear industry has never been there. Nuclear scientists have never been there. Nuclear academics. Nuclear academics have never been there. Bah! Come on, Dana, you can do better than that. I don't know if I can. Let me see what I can do. What can I do? Oh. I got no idea what I should use. Something dramatic or something subtle? That's not subtle. Well, that's the wrong one, is it? Yeah, there you go. That's a bit better. That's better. There you go. Get back here. So pick up there tomorrow night or wherever. I don't think we ever do pick up there. We say that all the time. Well, pick up over here tomorrow night. We got a big show for tomorrow night. Great show tomorrow night. Crazy show tomorrow night. We covered a Tokai nuclear excursion they had, where they made 300,000 people shelter in the place. Nuclear's mad, boy. We're going to end the poll, because that's what polls are for. They're supposed to end at some point. Bye-bye, Paul. Been good to know you. 44 votes, 77% of the people said, fuck it. Let's put homeless in there. I like James Lucett's comment. You could put a rock in there. Nobody would even notice anyway. Isn't that sad? Goodbye, Paul. It's been good. Well, I mean, like, I said put the homeless in it because they're at ground zero all the time. They actually understand radiation. Obviously, the IAEA don't even know how to spell it, let alone what it is. I don't mean any disrespect. Maybe a little bit, but... Well, whatever. I think we done pretty darn good, didn't we? If you made it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up or something. Night, everybody. Don't forget to shout out Colette last night, I think, and Swanee D. Good night, everybody. Yeah, you know, I mean, it's heartbreaking. They killed so many homeless people. The 16,000 workers that quit, I showed you earlier, that was homeless, by the way. It is what it is. No Dan in the sauna tonight. Hope he's doing okay. Stephen Young, Albert, Kevin Blanche, John Shiflett, Snakes and Doggies, Port Angeles, Danny San, Thinker, John Shiflett. Good night, everybody. Another Gmail. John Curtis. Peace were. Hope everybody has a great night, great day tomorrow. James Lucet. Albert. Good night, folks. Angel's Place. James Mangan. I'm an expert name butcherer. Darcy. I think I got everybody that was chatting. Obsolete donated 130 last night, which was perfect timing. Invisible Rabbit. Let me see. Who did I miss? Who did I miss? Dana Nisana, which is pretty unusual. Dana don't show up. We're almost down through the names here. If you're wondering what the hell I'm doing, that'll be it. Timber, Traveler. I got everybody. think. And hugs for everybody at home watching this tonight, tomorrow, next day. The nuclear industry, the problem is they're panicking, right? They're panicking because renewables and storage, like compressed air storage, pumped hydro, water batteries, there's all kinds of storage. They've been scuttling it for decades, but now they can't keep it back anymore. Last year, 2021 was the equivalent of 333 large nuclear power plants where the renewables came online just 12 months. Claiming that we need nuclear for climate change is a complete dishonest remark. It's completely dishonest. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. We got an amazing show lined up for everybody tomorrow night. I'm gonna frig with my lights again. I'm just sick of frigging with my lights. I'll just stick one up my butt. Maybe I'll just shine enough. We won't need any more lights. Take care, folks. Have a great night. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. And when you get a chance, the video will be there waiting for you. It doesn't cost anything. It's sitting there waiting for you, calling your name. Thanks, Mark. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Take care, folks.